Well, you already know the 49ers are on a 3-game skid. However, we got bigger fish to fry when it comes to the 49ers because the trade deadline is upon us. We're just a few hours away. So we're going to discuss that first. And then we are going to get into other topics that pertain to the San Francisco 49ers. How do they turn things around? What does the rest of the season look like? And what the hell is just going on in general with this team? We're going to talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it is Tuesday afternoon. Ryan is being hit up like crazy on his phone. He must be. Are you John Lynch in disguise? Like, are you just trying to make a trade right now? What's going on, Ryan?
Moving houses, brother. Moving houses. That's what we're going. That's what we're doing right now.
God, mixed in a silent mode, brother. My goodness. You are
Yeah.
popular. All right. The 49ers are rumored to be in on a few players. One of them, by the way, right before we went live, just went to the Bears and Montez Sweat for a second-round pick.
Yeah.
Those same Bears, however, have granted permission to Jalen Johnson to seek a trade. The 49ers were linked to him a couple weeks ago. Nothing ended up happening. And now the rumor has come out that the Bills and the 49ers are the front runners to potentially land him. So let's talk about this trade deadline in general. Maybe it's not Jalen Johnson. Maybe they don't do anything. What is your gut feeling? Do you think the 49ers make a move before, 4 hours, next 4 hours? Do you think the 49ers make a move? Let's start there.
I do. I think it's going to be I've been feeling this way, and of course, who knows? But I've been feeling this way for, I don't know, 2 weeks, a week, that they're going to sign a corner, and everyone's going to be like, oh, it's not going to be a Surtain or a Johnson. It's going to be some guy that we would just out of left field that we're like, okay, that's cool. That's kind of been my feeling, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think they're going to be getting any of these big names that we've been hearing about. It's particularly after we heard what Johnson wants a restructure of his contract, right? So,
well, I think he's a free agent. Yeah, he's going to want big money.
He's going to want big money. And so I don't know if the 49ers are ready to just commit to that. They've already been handing out money left and right. I just don't see that happening, honestly, with Jalen Johnson. Hopefully I'm wrong. I think he's a talented young corner, but I think what we're going to do is get some corner that out of left field that we haven't heard anything about yet.
Yeah, maybe that guy's like a Kendall Fuller in Washington, which would be a nice get as well. I've thrown some other names out there, like a Dante Jackson, that type of player. But, the thing is that when a player is able to seek a trade, like the Bears have done with Johnson, that doesn't mean the team's necessarily willing to trade him. Like, they're going to ask for a ton in return. And if they don't get that, then they're most likely just going to franchise tag him and try to trade him next offseason. They hold that ability to do so. They don't have to trade him. The Bills make a lot of sense as well because they're very desperate for a corner. They lost a lot of defensive pieces, including their top corner, throughout the attrition of this season. So they make a ton of sense. And, maybe the 49ers can get it done. Let's say the 49ers could get it done and it came down to them offering that first round pick for Jalen Johnson. Is that something you do?
No. The 49ers need to invest in their offensive line. I'm not spending first round draft picks at all. I mean, we've gone through 3 years without a first round draft pick, and I think we're seeing the consequences of it. Honestly, they could have invested in a really good offensive line. They need to do that. I've been saying that for 6 years. It's time to do it, and I don't want to see us spend our first round draft picks acquiring a corner, and then on top of that, you got to pay them. So paying them and trading your draft capital, that's not what I would do. I know the 49ers need to do something. They need to get a corner. I get it, but I'm not willing to sacrifice first round draft picks to do that. And that's why I think they're going to get like some corner that we're not really. It's not on the radar right now. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. My gut feeling a few days ago was Montez Sweat was going to be a 49er. So
Yeah.
my gut feeling was already wrong once. So I'm not going to put my new gut feeling out there. That was the gut feeling. I'm all out of gut feeling tricks. It's over for me. That was the guess. So
And why are the
that did
Bears
not happen.
buying right now? I mean, do you think the Bears really think they got it? I mean,
I
do they
if
think they
so
got a chance? Like, I
when
don't
it came across, I laughed and was like, what the hell are they doing? But then I thought about it a little bit more and I realized a few things are at play here. First of all, they have 2 first round picks. They have Jalen Johnson as an asset that they either trade at the deadline or they, again, could potentially tag and trade this offseason. So I think that they're just looking to add for a second round player. I mean, if you got a Montez Sweat type of player in the second round, you'd be ecstatic.
yeah.
So I think that's where they're at is, hey, we still have 2 first rounders. We'll be fine. We also have the asset in Jalen Johnson if we decide to cash in or we bring him back either way. But they're looking to get some assets for sure. So,
Yeah, my boy Josh. I grew up with Josh right here.
uh,
Yeah, Josh Cullivan on the screen right here says, "Do not get rid of first rounders." Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Nice. What's up, Josh? What's up, Josh? Okay, let's move on because there's going to be breaking news at some point on all
Mhm.
these a bunch of players going around the league. Actually, before we move on from the trade deadline, there is something else I want to tackle.
Okay.
One thing to pay attention to is these players going to other teams that are also very good. We saw Seattle make a
Yeah.
move already. We've seen Philadelphia make a move. It sounds like Buffalo's in on Jalen Johnson. Like that has to concern us a little bit too. At some point, there is a fine line. Of course, you don't want to mortgage the future. You said you're not willing to give up a first round pick. I don't know that I would be either, by the way. However, you're also risking this guy going to another contender that you may have to meet down the road. How much
Sure.
does that play into it? And are you worried about some other players being shifted around the league, going to some of the 49ers rivals and making this tough on the 49ers?
See, I don't think you should move capital, draft capital, or whatnot out of fear of other teams. I think you should
Yeah.
do it if it makes sense for your team. And I think I would give up a first rounder if it was for the right player, but to me, that's O line, right? And I don't think it's realistic to get an offensive lineman right now and insert him in the middle of the season at the bye week. I don't think that's realistic. Now, I guess it's possible, and I'd be down for that if it was a legitimate guy who had, multiple years. If he's on like a rookie contract and he's got 2 years left or something like that, then it makes sense for me to trade a first rounder. But outside of that, I don't think you make decisions out of fear of what the other teams are doing. I think you do what's right for your team.
Absolutely. And Steve-O, we are aware we did touch on that to start the show. So we'll see. We'll see if the 49ers can make another move here. Let's talk about the NFC West. We just briefly touched on Seattle making a move.
Hmm.
They lost their arguably their best pass rusher for the season. They
Yes.
then remedied that by going and getting Frank Clark and then who was the guy they just traded for? I'm drawing a blank. All these
The guy
names
from the
floating around here.
Giants, dude from the
Yeah.
Giants. I
Leonard
can't
Williams.
remember his name.
Leonard Williams,
Yeah.
that's who it is. So they go get Leonard Williams, they add Frank Clark. At this point, if the 49ers don't make a move, are the 49ers even the best team in the West? And this is a crazy conversation to have. You think about our conversations 3 weeks ago, Ryan.
Yeah.
We're talking about undefeated, Super Bowl, who are we going to meet in the AFC? And here we are 3 weeks later, not extremely humbled and not even first place in the NFC West. I know from a standing standpoint, they are not first in the West, but are they the best team in the West? Those are two different things. Do you believe the 49ers are the best team in the NFC West, or is that Seattle?
Well, I mean, uh, according to the record, Seattle is right now. Right
Yeah.
now, with talent wise, I would assume it was the Niners. I would have thought that coming in the season. I still think that the Niners have more talent than Seattle, but I feel like those guys are operating on all cylinders right now. They're clicking as a team. They have been for the last couple years. Pete Carroll's done a really good job coaching those guys, and I feel like they just got that good vibe right now. And Niners do not. I think that's the biggest problem. From a talent perspective, I think the Niners are better than the Seahawks. From a record perspective, no. I mean, the Seahawks are they're on top of the NFC West right now. So no, the Niners are not better than the Seahawks right now. The thing is, I'm looking at the Seahawks upcoming games. They play the Ravens on Sunday, then they play the Commanders, then they play the Rams, and then they got to face the Niners, Cowboys, Niners again, Eagles. and then Titans and Steelers and Cardinals. So their schedule is just as tough as ours moving forward, I would say. I think the key to this NFC West is going to be who sweeps. I feel like if it's a tie, I think Seahawks right now probably are going to win the NFC West if we split 1-1. That's not necessarily the case depending on what happens with the rest of their schedule, but the Niners need to sweep the Seahawks again, and I think that's going to be very tough, especially if the Seahawks go and beat the Ravens on Sunday. If they were able to pull that off, then it gets really scary for the 49ers because now the Seahawks would be 6-2. They've just beat the Ravens. They beat the Browns, a common opponent. So Niners need to get real quick, man. We went from being 5-0, dominating the NFC West, to being a threat of not winning the NFC West at all, and trying to fight for a wild card spot. So I'm concerned, man. But the Niners, the ball's in their court. They have the talent. They got to get it together. I think there's some leadership issues, some cohesion issues, some locker room issues that are kind of messing everything up right now.
Yeah, I think there's two things at play here. I don't know that the 49ers are the better team in this moment, especially if they don't make a deal. However, I still would pick them to win the division. And the reason is because of that tiebreaker. When you look at the 49ers losses, 2 of them have come against the AFC, which is beneficial in their favor as far as this goes. Seattle lost week 1 in division. And that, I think, might come back to bite them if they end up in a tiebreaker situation. Assuming the 49ers sweep the Rams and the Cardinals, that loss is going to be huge on their record. So I think the 49ers actually might win the division. I said this after the draft. I made a video immediately after the draft saying that Seattle is coming a lot faster than what people think is a possibility here. They are right there. They are on the 49ers' heels. They are not a year away. This team is very, very good, and they've built it to stop the San Francisco 49ers. They have been very intelligent with that. They didn't overpay a bunch of, older guys. They let people walk. They rebuilt on the fly. They've gotten young. They've gotten athletic, inexpensive, and they've built a team to beat the 49ers. The way they've drafted has been perfect for them. And I think that might be a possibility right now. They might be the better team. And I think the fact that we're even having the conversation, whether they are or are not, kind of brings us back to reality that not only is it going to be tough to go through a team like Philadelphia, Detroit, maybe we'll see. Dallas, the 49ers tend to own. But if they face Seattle in the playoffs, that's not a guarantee now either. This thing just got a lot tougher for the San Francisco 49ers. And quite frankly, they did it to themselves. I mean, they had an opportunity here to really run away with things, and they just didn't capitalize.
Yeah, the NFC has become tougher than a lot of people expected in general, right? Like, I think everyone's like, oh, whoever wins the AFC is going to win the Super Bowl. I don't know if that's the case anymore with these teams that are emerging. I mean, obviously the Eagles, the Seahawks, the Lions look really, really good. There's a lot of good NFC teams out there. I honestly predicted before the season that the 49ers were going to split with Seattle, that they would lose the first game in Seattle and win at home against Seattle.
Yep.
And I still kind of think that's what happens, which is concerning because if the Seahawks continue to have the success they're having, if they beat the Ravens somehow this weekend and then we split with them, I feel like it's almost a lock for Seattle to win the NFC West.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they beat the Ravens. Lamar Jackson versus the NFC is a real thing. His record versus the NFC is a real thing. When you play him but once every 4 years, it is impossible to game plan for him. It is on 1 week. And his record against the NFC proves that, against some very good teams as well. So I actually think the Ravens will win that game. That, again, will put the 49ers technically in first place, which is great. But it is going to come down to those 2 games. They can't lose both of them. Certainly, they have to win one of those games. And really, the 49ers just have to win a game at this point.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't feel good coming off a bye. Here's the other disadvantage. Jacksonville's also coming off of a bye. So it's not as if the 49ers have this big advantage the way that Cincinnati had this last week with the 49ers, where, okay, the 49ers had a short week. Cincinnati's coming off of a bye. You can understand how things get squirrely. Well, the 49ers are traveling to the East Coast, but they have the bye. So you're saying, all right, well, Jacksonville's not going to have a bye. They've had some London games. Maybe they'll be tired. No, they also have a bye week. So there is no advantage for the 49ers in this scenario against Jacksonville. And Jacksonville is a very good team. And unfortunately for the 49ers, right now, there is 3 straight games on film of how to beat the 49ers that they can just study for the next 2 weeks and be prepared for the San Francisco 49ers. It is not going to be easy to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And am I mistaken, Jesse? Isn't Jacksonville, aren't they the hottest team in the NFL right now as far as like a win streak? I think they
Yeah.
are.
I mean, yeah, I think so. It was the Chiefs until they lost this last week, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think the
so.
Jaguars are on the hottest win streak right now in the NFL. So the Jaguars are on a win streak coming off a bye. The Niners are on a losing streak coming off a bye. The Jaguars are a lot better than people give them credit for, at least on the West Coast, right? We've always just written off Jacksonville Jaguars. They're a good team. Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback, man. So it's not going to be easy to travel all the way to Jacksonville and
They're
knock
a
that team
complete
off their
offense too. They can run the ball like crazy. They've got
Yes.
decent wide receivers, a good tight end. Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback. Their defense is playing a little bit better than what maybe people thought. So yeah, they're a complete team right now. A very complete
Absolutely.
team.
Absolutely. And the Niners they got it this I titled this show on my channel, The 49ers Need a Good Bye Week. 49ers and Brock Purdy need a good bye week. They really do. They need to come out of this bye week on the same page because right now they're not. I reported on my channel last week what I was told in regards to the 49ers players on defense and even John Lynch not being sold on Steve Wilks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jav Vega just posted a picture. Says a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's Wilks talking to the defense at halftime, and the body language that you see from the players kind of confirms what I've been told. They're not on the same page. There's got some issues there, and they need to nip that in the bud ASAP because if they're not bought in, they're going to have problems moving forward. That's like the biggest crucial part to me. Brock Purdy's got to get back on his game. He can't be turning the ball over late. 49ers get the run game going, and they got to get the defense on the same page as Wilks.
Well, I promise this is not as bad as things are. This show is going to end on a positive note, and we definitely have to get through the negative. This is my first time, other than the post game, talking about the San Francisco 49ers. So we're going to get through some of that, but we are going to end this show on a positive note because I do think that there is still a path for this team to be successful, whether they make a trade or not. And so we're definitely going to have to talk about that as well. Before we get to the next topic, though, let's get to these super chats. Dave says, "What up, guys?
What up, Dave?
Dave comes back and says, "Will we get anyone? A few hours left." I don't know. Like I said, my gut feeling is all out. I have no idea. I thought it was going to be Sweat. So
I think it's a low level corner. I think we'll get a corner that hasn't been on the radar yet. That's what I think happens.
I think that's fair. Matt says desperation makes teams overspend. It's a very good point, Matt. That's a very, very good point. Night Tide says maybe go for Adoree Jackson to avoid a bidding war. Yeah, I think guys like Adoree Jackson, who is it? Dante Jackson, the other corner actually in
anyone
New York
with the last name Jackson
is pretty good. Yeah, anybody with the last name Jackson. The other corner in New York, I think Kendall Fuller. Those are some names that are out there that are kind of like secondary tier guys, but still good players, and I think would actually upgrade the secondary. So I like where your head's at. Niner Matt says 49ers won't trade their second or third rounders. They have a running backs and kickers to draft, Jesse. You know what? You put it that way, Matt.
That's a good point.
You're probably right. Good point. Yeah. Official B&A Music. What's up, man? He says, insert Jim Mora playoffs rant. Yeah. Playoffs? I hear you, man. I hear you. Sean says the defense has issues, one of which that drives me batty is tackling. Oh, tell me about it. Basic fundamentals. How many times did Hufanga leave his feet last game to try to shoulder hit a tackle, not seeing guys wrap up? Yeah, I mean that. Yeah. But guys like Hufanga and Fred Warner, they are constantly kind of tackling that way, So this is kind of the way they're grab and drag type guys. They gator roll. They don't. They hit with the shoulder. Charvarius Ward's out there making business decisions. It was all bad. And maybe that goes to the disconnect that you're talking about, Ryan. I can't put that on Wilks, but clearly maybe there's something there where they just aren't picking up what he's laying down and they're not playing hard for him. And I think that's a real thing as well.
It is, and to speak on this one, Nick Wagoner put out first 5 weeks, Niners allowed an average of 49.4 yards after contact per game, which was second in the NFL. The past 3 weeks, the 49ers are the 31st. So the second worst team in tackling yards after contact allowed. So
how do you go from second best to second worst like that?
I don't understand it. I don't get it. I think it's travel. I think it's getting beat up by the Browns. I also think it's this Wilks dynamic. They're not bought in. They're not bought into Wilks, and that needs to be fixed. They either need to buy in or Kyle needs to replace them or do something, because you can't have players not bought into the coach and expect the season to go well.
Yeah, I mean, these are the things, right? It's frustrating because you say something, you can easily say, hey, these are professionals, do it. And I agree. I don't think that's a statement that is
right
out of left field. I would agree with that, but this goes back to the human element again. There's always a human element that nobody ever wants to talk about. It's always, hey, these guys get paid a lot of money, just do your damn jobs, this. And it's like, that's not the way it works, man. There's always a human element to this. James Welsh says Niners will not win a Super Bowl until they have a true top 5 elite quarterback. We have a coach that doesn't know what that looks like. Not hard to understand if you've watched football long enough. You might be onto something here. And this is Kyle Shanahan made this statement essentially before taking the 49ers job, that he was worried about taking the 49ers job because a quarterback was not in place. It's almost as if he knew his weakness was the quarterback position. He couldn't scout it. He couldn't develop it. He just wasn't confident in that area. He's very prolific and confident in other areas, but the quarterback position is one that has continually been a bugaboo to him. We'll see what Brock Purdy ends up being long-term, but as of right now, it does seem like he's gotten yet another guy that is not going to meet that mold of being a top 10 quarterback, and that is what the 49ers are missing. It is why he was worried about not having a quarterback in place. And maybe Kyle Shanahan, much like Andy Reid, will go somewhere else and win a Super Bowl because the quarterback will be in place whenever he goes there. I don't know.
If the 49ers want to win a Super Bowl, they have to absolutely dominate on defense, and they're not doing that. They have to obliterate people in the run game.
With the way the roster is currently constructed is what you're saying, yes.
Right, with this quarterback is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, with Brock Purdy as your quarterback, you need the defense to be absolutely dominant. At least top 5, if not the best in the NFL. You need the run game to be on the same level, and right now, over these last 3 games, that's not what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't. That's where we're at with Brock. It's like we don't know. Again, long term, we can talk about that later. But as of right now, I think there's enough proof for this season that says he's not. The questions we had when it came to Brock Purdy was, can he carry a team? Actually, you know what? I'm going to save it. We're going to talk about Brock Purdy next. We'll talk about it. Beats and Meat says, I'm not super worried until we have our full suite of weapons and we get beat. Then it's time to panic. I hear you, Beats and Meats, but we also have an older complementary of weapons, and relying on all of them to be healthy the rest of the season, that is concerning. That has to be a concern. So, you know,
Beats and Meats really threw me off with that name.
He's in here a lot. It's an awesome name. Gammon says, how do you maintain eye contact so well with your camera? It's awkward and unnatural for not just myself, but plenty of people. Any tips? Position your camera right above your monitor. So when you look at your monitor, it looks like you're looking at your camera. It's impossible to look at the camera full time because I have to keep up on the chat. Right now, I'm looking directly into the camera because I don't have anything to look at, and I don't have an issue with that. I guess I could see how it would be awkward, but
I never look at the camera.
Okay, that's fair. But it looks like you are.
Yeah, I just look at the screen.
Yeah, it looks like you are. Right now, I'm looking at the screen because I'm reading super chats and I'm looking at Ryan. So it just depends. I think you just have to angle your camera in a certain spot, and that will help as well. James Welsh says it was gross negligence to not try for Lamar. Remember those Bosa Lamar conversations we had in the offseason,
Clearly.
and we said we would do it in a heartbeat, and everybody's like, "No, you can't do that." We like, oh god,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, good. Nice one.
Yeah.
Matt says, "Hey guys, let's talk Purdy's fourth quarter stats play." Okay, let's talk Brock Purdy. You know what, Matt? Just because you asked, we will talk Brock Purdy. So you're bringing up the fourth quarter stats and play, and I'll ask you, Ryan, what is the most concerning thing that you are seeing from Brock Purdy at this point?
Well, I was trying to find the stats on that fourth quarter. I have it somewhere, but the biggest thing that's concerning me right now. Well, let's start off with a question. Let me start off with a question. When you think Dak Prescott, what do you think about, Jesse? Like what
Like,
comes to mind?
what's the media narrative, or what do I think about? I think those are two different things.
Well, I think, what do the 49er fans think about Dak Prescott? What's the overall
Oh, they think
impression of
he's
him?
not clutch. They
Think
think
he's
he's a
not?
turnover machine.
Yeah, yep. So Dak Prescott has the same amount of attempts. I think they're 3 different than Brock Purdy, and he has the same amount of interceptions. So the feeling that people get about Dak Prescott, I mean, the numbers are the same with Brock Purdy. But the numbers that really concern me, and Matt brought up the fourth quarter numbers. I'm trying to find them. I don't have them, but the numbers I do have that concern the heck out of me is Brock Purdy is ranked third out of all the starting quarterbacks in turnover worthy plays. He's also passing to the most wide open receivers in the NFL. So the fact that he's third in turnover worthy plays and
That
passing to
trend is
them,
still continuing, the wide receiver one from last year.
yes,
Wow.
yes. I mean, go watch the tape too. Go watch the tape. I mean, look at the passes he completes to Brandon Ayuk.
No,
He is,
I get
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
I will say that there have been some pretty good tight window throws he's made. Now, that doesn't mean that's the trend, right? The trend says he's throwing to the most wide open receivers on a regular basis. I did not know that that was still a statistic. I know that last year it was. I didn't realize it was still in place, but that's good to know. Okay.
Do you know who the most wide open receiver in the NFL is?
Most wide open receiver in the whole NFL? Is it Brandon Ayuk?
Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk. So that's who Brock Purdy's passing to, yet he's third out of the only quarterbacks that are worse than him that are starting quarterbacks is Desmond Ritter and Mac Jones as far as turnover worthy plays.
Yeah, that's not
That's
good
a
company.
concern. And the thing is, Brock is 20th and 20, I think he's 22nd in the passing attempts. So he's not being asked to pass a lot. If that number increases, which happens in games when you're behind, you have to pass to catch up, then you can expect more turnovers. And I think that's what we're seeing at the end of these games. Now, Brock is young, and I haven't like completely come to a conclusion on who Brock Purdy is as a quarterback yet. I'm with you on that.
It's impossible
Yeah,
for
I
anybody
need
to
like
come. It's too
yeah,
early. Yeah.
I need 2 or 3 seasons on that before I declare anything on any quarterback. And that's why I thought it was so ridiculous to write off Trey Lance after 3.5 games. Absolutely ridiculous. So I'm not going to do that to Brock Purdy even after 16 games. But the trend we're seeing right now is sketch. Now he's young again. Maybe this will develop and change as he matures as a quarterback and ages. But right now in this Super Bowl window, right? That's the reason we went with Brock Purdy because we're in a Super Bowl window. We don't have time for Trey Lance to develop. We got to win now. Well, this is what we're seeing from this win now quarterback, and it's definitely concerning.
Yeah, it most certainly is concerning. And this was, I think it was the week of the Miami game when we found out that Jimmy Garoppolo was essentially done for the season. A lot of people knew that I liked Purdy coming into the draft, and that I had watched a lot of Brock Purdy because of that. And I had. And they said, "What are we getting in Brock Purdy?" And I mentioned all the good things that we were getting, but the one thing that I did say is the things that you don't like about Jimmy G are, well, one, he's flat-footed in the pocket. I mean, he's not getting away from anybody. Heavy-footed, I should say, heavy-footed in the pocket. And two, he makes a what the F play way too much. And you're like, dude, how does this happen? And I said, Brock Purdy is certainly not heavy footed in the pocket. He's very nimble. You're going to see him be evasive, all those things. That's great. But he does have that Jimmy Garoppolo-esque game where he's going to make what the F throws. And it's going to come out of nowhere. That's what you saw all the time in college. Now, last year, so that was him in college. Then you get into last year. The turnover worthy plays were also very high, but nobody wanted to talk about it because almost interceptions don't count. So it was a stat that we shouldn't talk about because the interceptions didn't happen. Okay, fair enough. Then we get into training camp, and he's throwing a ton of interceptions there. And people equated that to, okay, he's just trying to work through getting back and figure out what he can get away with and what he can't get away with. That's fair. I mean, I think that could be an accurate take, but he has a ton of interceptions there. Then we get into the regular season. He was high in turnover worthy plays going into this 3-game stretch, but the turnovers again weren't happening. So people didn't want to hear it. And now those turnover worthy plays that have always been there are actually being caught and being taken away by the defense. And so now people are looking at it and they're concerned with it and saying, oh my, where is this coming from? It has always been there. The teams just weren't taking it away. That is the difference. That is actually what's happening, because what people are saying as they're trying to like figure this whole thing out is they talk about Brock Purdy and they say, well, it was so good for 3 quarters. What happened in that 4th quarter? He's the same player. Teams are just taking the ball away. Outside of the Cleveland game, that was a bit of an anomaly. You can talk about that. That whole game from beginning to end really was not very good. Last drive aside, and even in that drive, he tried to give the ball away and missed some throws. But that game was not what Brock Purdy is. The last 2 games are actually very accurate in who Brock Purdy is, and quite frankly, has always been good quarterback, playing good football, but will give the defense chances. Defense doesn't capitalize. Numbers look great. 49ers win. Everything's awesome. Defense does capitalize. Numbers don't look so great. 49ers lose. Everything's not awesome. Like that's basically what happened. Brock Purdy has not changed the last 2 weeks compared to who he's always been. The defense taking the ball away, that is the difference. They're capitalizing on those mistakes finally.
And he was honestly the same way in college. Like, even though, again, I'm not going to make ultimate decisions on who Brock Purdy is yet, but if you look at who he was in college, this is kind of what we're seeing now. He's kind of a streaky player. Like, I coach basketball, right? And I know you play basketball. You know, there's some guys are just really streaky.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll miss like 20 in a row and then they'll make like 10 in a row, right? Like it's kind of their game. I feel like that's kind of what Brock is a little bit. He's going to get hot and he's going to be fine and do good, and then he's going to get in a rut and do what he's been doing. Again, though, I really think it's just he's more of a – now he is a playmaker. He's not just –
He is a playmaker.
I don't
agree.
like them quarterback, but there's parts of his game that kind of reminds me of a system quarterback. Like he needs – like we talked about, he needs the defense. He needs to play from up front. He needs the defense to play really well. He needs the running game to be doing really well, so he doesn't feel like he has to be that guy, because when he feels like he needs to be that guy, that's when you see these reckless game show up for Brock Purdy. And I think that's what's going to be key for the success for the 49ers under Brock Purdy is all those other elements have to be in place for him to find real success, because if you put him in that position where like go win the game for us, Brock, he's going to try to do too much and he's going to make dumb decisions. And that's what we've been seeing.
System quarterback is interesting. And I also don't look at it as an offensive thing. I think he is, but he also isn't in this sense. And I'll try to explain. He can play outside of structure. If things don't go exactly, Jimmy Garoppolo is a good example of this. And I hate to keep using Jimmy, but everybody watched Jimmy play, so he always is going to be the point of reference. And he was the last quarterback here. Jimmy Garoppolo was a full system quarterback because things had to, not only did the players have to be in place, but the plays had to be perfect. And if they weren't, once we got outside of read 1, read 2, it was full panic mode. Nothing was going to happen out of structure. Very rarely was something good going to happen out of structure. Usually bad things happen. Usually that's when you get the Jimmy point and he throws downfield and it's a pick and whatever.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is different in that sense where
right.
If read 1 and read 2 aren't there, not only is he going to get to read 3, but he's also going to be able to break the pocket and get mobile, whether that's to keep his eyes downfield and make a play or run the ball as we saw this last week, which was a nice addition. We'll talk about that later. So I don't think he's a system quarterback in the sense that the scheme has to be perfect for him.
Agreed.
I do think the other half of being a system quarterback, though, he certainly has, at least right now. And we had 2 questions about Brock Purdy, not only long-term, but this year. One, is he going to be worth getting paid when talent starts getting stripped away from him? early answer to that is no, but he's also still very young. So I'm not going to say that that is set in stone. But for this year, the answer to that is no. He can't win without all the talent being there. We've seen that. Okay. The other question was when you get to the playoffs, deep in the playoffs and into the Super Bowl potentially, and you're going up against an elite quarterback that is not going to be afraid of that defense and they're going to score at will, can Brock Purdy go toe to toe and hang with those quarterbacks? I think the answer to that is also no. And so right now, everything has to go well as far as players being healthy, the defense being top tier, in order for the 49ers to continue to put together wins. That is not Brock Purdy's fault. He is still young in his career. The 49ers expected that those things would be in place, by the way, for Brock Purdy. I doubt that they thought that Brock Purdy by himself was going to be able to go out and just carry this team. He did a great job of trying that this last week, but eventually he ran out of steam, and that should be expected for where he's at in his career at this point. So that is where we are at with Brock Purdy. The team around him does have to improve significantly if this team has any chance to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's actually I mean, I don't want to be negative, but honestly, if I'm being real, I was hopeful that the 49ers defense was going to be so good this year that the 49ers could hang with a really good team in the AFC in the Super Bowl and compete with the Patrick Mahomes, that the system would be good enough to where our defense is strong enough that we can hold Patrick Mahomes down and compete. But right now, the way the defense is looking against the pass, if you're going against the Dolphins or the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they're going to be putting up a ton of points on this Niners defense the way they're playing right now. And there's no way I see Brock Purdy being able to hang with that from a scoring standpoint. I just don't see it right now. Now, maybe the defense will switch up and get back to their old days where they were holding teams to not a lot of points. But right now, the way it's looking, man, if Burrow can do that to you, he can do it to you again in the Super Bowl. Tua can definitely do it to you. The Dolphins could do it to you. The Chiefs could do it to you. So it's sketchy. The chance of the 49ers win a Super Bowl right now, based on the last couple of weeks, is not very high.
I agree.
Sorry, guys.
We'll see.
I apologize. Yeah.
The coach says Wilkes will get canned because it's the league. I get it. But the real issue is this is a knock on Kyle. How can we give him credit for Saleh or D'Amico with what he's done with Wilkes? Head coach's job is to coach the coaches.
It's true. One thing I coach, good to see you, brother. And one thing I said before the season on Grant Show is I don't see the personality. Like here's exactly what I said, and we're starting to see it play out. But Wilkes and Shanahan, to me, that was only going to work out when they're winning. They have very similar personalities, and it's going to be very conflicting to me. I don't see it working out when there's adversity. They seem like the type of personalities that are not going to mesh well. And I feel like that's what we're seeing right now. And that's what I'm hearing also that's coming out of the 49ers. So, yeah, I don't know, man. Wilkes didn't seem like a smart hire. Not that he's a bad coach necessarily. I'm not trying to put it on him, but it just didn't seem like a good match personality-wise.
Yeah, I thought from a leadership standpoint that he would be a good fit. And a lot of that was talking to some of the Panthers guys and over on the content creator side, they really loved Wilkes. I thought for sure that Fangio would not be a good fit with the San Francisco 49ers. I still think that would have been true. Fangio is very, very stubborn. Mike McDaniels actually talked about that very thing and said, "Hey, I'm not stupid enough to say that I know everything. I'm just going to let him do his thing. That's why I brought him in." That was kind of a shot at Kyle as well, saying, "Hey, he's too stubborn to just turn the defense over to somebody and let them do their thing." What is interesting is Wilkes taking the job if, in fact, Kyle Shanahan, and I do believe that this is the case, that Kyle Shanahan wants his defense ran a certain way. And so Wilkes has to acquiesce to that, and that is not his style. And so it's just not a good fit for him schematically and what he would prefer to do either. And so that's why you're seeing maybe the secondary is not married to the line and vice versa and what have you. But Coach, I think your ultimate point here is why does it seem to be everybody but Kyle that is blamed? And I agree with you.
Agreed.
Official B&A Music says the 49ers are depending on a rookie quarterback, kicker, and DC, plus an older running back. I hope we win, but by design alone, we'll laugh if this was the Rams doing that.
Yeah, I mean, how many 23-year-old quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl? I think it's one. Patrick Mahomes, right? Or is it Tom Brady? One of those two. 23 years old. I think one quarterback is 23. I think two.
What was Ben
24.
Roethlisberger? Was he there?
Oh, Ben was 24, 23.
Okay.
So I think there's been like 2 or 3 total quarterbacks in the history of the NFL that have won a Super Bowl at age 24 or younger, I believe.
Well, it's not even that though. It's the rookie thing too. I mean, this is essentially Brock Purdy's rookie year still that we're halfway through. You know what I mean? So
I don't like that one. I don't like that one, Jess. I'll be honest. I'm over the calling Brock a rookie thing. I get it. I understand what you're saying from a playing standpoint, but he had a full season last year in the team. This is year 2. To me, I can't do the rookie thing anymore. I can't.
I'm
can't give him
not
that benefit.
saying I understand what you're saying. I'm not using it as a crutch or an excuse. I just, from a game played standpoint, he's still within his first 16 games. It stands to reason that he can improve in the second half of the season now, because now he's seeing there. The thing is that he's seeing things that he hasn't yet seen at the NFL level yet, and he's working through those. So now that he's seen, basically, remember when we thought the floor was, what was it, the Rams game? We're like, okay, if this is the floor, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've seen the floor. Okay, the real floor has now shown itself. It was the Cleveland game and the final 2 or 3 drives of each of the last 2 games. That is the floor. That being said, now that we know that and Brock knows that, I think that it can stand to reason that he can improve and learn from those things as well. And so when I say rookie, I'm saying as far as his 16 or 17 games played, right now in the regular season, I think he's at 13 games played. I just mean that as he goes throughout the season, he essentially is hitting that second season of games played. And I think that things can click for him a little bit.
I understand your point. Me and you agree on most things, but
yeah,
one
and that's
thing
fine. We don't need to agree on it, but it's the same way that I looked at Trey Lance, who was going into year 3, but it was like, okay,
well, then
sure,
he's
he's
still
going
a
into
rookie.
year 3, but come on, he's still a rookie essentially.
Then Jordan Love's still a rookie, right? Like someone in the comment, like I can't do that anymore for Brock, man. I feel like we have to hold, like, to me, the honeymoon is over. And that's what I titled my show yesterday. The honeymoon is over for Brock Purdy, and I can't call him a rookie anymore. I get what you're saying as far as like how many games he's played, but I can't do it anymore. He's not a rookie to me anymore.
That's totally fair. Brother Bob says Brock Purdy is definitely dink and dunk system quarterback. It's okay if no turnovers.
What is his name now?
Greenlaw, give me unsportsmanlike flag, because I said that he's the Dre Greenlaw of the chat. He's always toeing the line, so he's running with it. Brother Bob says, "Gotta walk into court, but these 2 guys are my faves." Thank you, Brother Bob. I appreciate you. Mm-hmm. Coach comes back. What's up, Coach? Coach, by the way, so he and I almost every day go on we call it a walk and talk, where we both go on a walk or a run and we talk about the 49ers. He turned his pregame show into that essentially this last Sunday, and I thought it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it. I hope you keep that format, Coach. We talked about that. I really enjoyed it. Coach says the defense is the new Trey Lance of the team. It's all their fault as long as we don't blame Kyle. We're falling for the okey doke. You're right, Coach. You're right. And I didn't think it would be the defense. In fact, before the season started, I tweeted out August 14th to be exact. If this team doesn't win a Super Bowl, I am not going to put it on Brock Purdy. It is Kyle Shanahan. Whether they win or they lose, it is Kyle Shanahan that gets the credit or the blame. I never thought that the defense would be the scapegoated unit. I didn't see that one coming. But either way, the premise was right. The premise was definitely right. You guys saying that, is there any moves that have been made? I haven't been keeping up on the trade thing. Looks like you guys haven't said breaking news or anything crazy. Okay. We got 2 more to get through quickly.
All right.
I want to talk about this 3-year trend because a lot of people have brought this up, and it was kind of brought up in a super chat like, hey, once we're healthy, we're good. And a lot of people are thinking this way, and that's fine. But for me, this 3-year trend is concerning, not because they can't dig themselves out of this hole. We've seen that, Ryan. But for me, it's concerning because we've seen what it takes to get there. Now the 49ers are in a situation where they come out of the bye. They have 9 games left. And essentially every game has to be a playoff mentality. We got to win this game. We got to win this game. We got to win this game. So they're starting this playoff mentality very, very early, which can take a toll physically and mentally. The other problem is even if they turn it around, and I fully expect that they are able to turn it around based off the last 2 years, the result is likely too little, too late to get the number 1 seed, which means they don't have a bye. They can't rest their bodies that are these are older players again. We talk about CMC, 27 years old. That's usually the final year before things start to drop off for most running backs. And he's getting a ton of workload. We already know that Trent Williams for the last 8 years has missed at least 2 games. He's up there in age. George Kittle normally misses a couple games. Deebo Samuel's already missed his games. These are physical ball players that have played a physical brand of football and are getting up there. So at what toll does it take to get out of this thing? I think this 3-year trend thing that people are kind of resting their hat on is like, hey, it'll be fine. They've done it before. It's good. I actually think that is fool's gold. That is the most fool's gold thing about this team, because that has resulted in not Super Bowls because the team has worn out. The team wore out big time going into the NFC Championship a couple years ago. It happened again last year with the injuries and what have you. This team cannot maintain that as these players age, in my opinion, and that is ultimately going to be their demise, even if they quote unquote turn it around. What do you think?
I mean, you can't depend on, going on a hot streak at the end of the season every year. Now, maybe there's something to be said about the 49ers step up when their back is against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what we've seen the last years. I think it is what we've seen. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. Again, I think the most unique thing about this season compared to other seasons is this dynamic that a source told me about, that we're seeing playing out, that we're hearing reported by multiple people now, in regards to the defense not buying into Steve Wilks, John Lynch not buying into Steve Wilks. That's a different dynamic than we've seen before on previous teams. Before, there was never a question whether the 49ers were listening to Saleh or like D'Amico Ryans. This is different. There's a rift somewhere in the locker room. The players are not bought in. And so that, to me, makes it more difficult to expect that kind of run that we've seen over the past couple of years take place again this year. So I'm concerned about it. I don't know if it's going to happen again. And also, this schedule is no joke finishing this season. They have a lot of tough opponents on the schedule. Jacksonville's good. Buccaneers can be sneaky. The Seahawks twice. Eagles. I mean, the Ravens. I mean, this is going to be tough. The 49ers got their work cut out for them. And it's weird because they're only 5-3, which, 5-3 week 8, we would have probably before the season been like, cool, they're in a good spot. But the concerning part is that it's 3 losses in a row, right? If it was like win 2, lose 1, win 1, lose 1. If it was back and forth like that, you could see the 49ers be able to fix it from week to week. But it's 3 in a row, which is the concerning part, because it seems like they're on the downward trajectory. Again, though, hopefully they turn it around. It's going to take some I think why I'm not as confident this year is because in order to fix what's going on between Wilks and the defense and the whole team in general, it's going to take some real high-end leadership from Kyle Shanahan, and I just don't know if he's built like that.
The 49ers in 2021 went on a 4-game losing streak, including entering the bye, a 3-game losing streak, coming out of the bye and losing that first game against the Indianapolis Colts, I believe it was, in the rain game. So it's not as if the 49ers haven't been here before, but you can't continue to physically rely on these players to go, because it's not just 9 weeks. If you don't get the number 1 seed, it's 9, 10, 11, 12 straight weeks to get to the Super Bowl. You're basically in playoff mode. That is not easy for anybody to do. Tensions are high in the playoffs. Your level of play, your level of focus, everything is upped a bit. And that's where the 49ers are at right now. They need that. They know that number 1 seed is so important. So they're And they know that a 4-game losing streak is not ideal in any sort of fashion. They are going to flip a switch coming out of this bye week. I fully believe that. But at what expense? If you had won 2 of these 3 games, I'm not saying that you coast, but the intensity is dialed back just a little bit. You can pick and choose your spots throughout the season of when to go and when not to go, and really kind of figure that out. But now it's full go mode. That to me is probably the most concerning thing actually about this team. It's not that they won't turn it around, because I do believe this team is very talented. I think the playoffs are definitely still going to happen, and I think they can make a run. I just don't know at what expense. Where does this team end up physically going into a possible NFC championship if they're lucky enough to get there, and a Super Bowl if they're lucky enough to get there?
Yeah, and are they going to pray? I mean, the big concern. The thing though, the difference to me was having CMC inject that life into their veins. That the shot of adrenaline that CMC gave them last year, that kind of inspired that
That was
run.
last year, but 2021, like I said,
Yeah,
they did have that 4-game losing streak.
I got you. But what I'm saying last year, when
Mhm.
I'm talking about last year, CMC
Yeah.
injected that adrenaline into them, got them on this run. What's going to be that shot of adrenaline this year? I don't necessarily know what that is.
No, that's a very good question. Matthew Bowman says, I can see Kyle Lynch saying we are good and not trading. They let Sweat go to the Bears for a second. That's dumb. I don't think I personally don't think that's their attitude. I think that they are certainly trying to work a trade. I think they're going to continue to do that to the deadline. I don't know if they're going to get one done. They do have to weigh assets going in and going out. There's a lot that goes into this. There's money trends, there's asset trends, there's a lot that goes into it. On the surface, a second for Sweat would have been great, but what is the cost? How much depth are you giving up when you make those moves? How much money do you have to set aside to go re-sign a guy like Sweat or whatever? So I'm not saying, for a team that is all in, I understand being, hey, they should go all in, do whatever it takes. I get that thought process, but I also understand keeping the long term in mind as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
And
Niner
just
Matt
can I be
says,
honest, man?
yeah,
Like to that last one, sorry,
yeah,
but I just don't understand how many pass rushers 49er fans and
that I
49ers think that
agree.
we need.
That I agree. They have
Like
the talent, Ryan. You're right.
right. Like I don't really think that's what a need for the 49ers. I think they're good on the pass rush side. How many dollars are they going to invest into this pass rush? It's
I know.
crazy.
I agree. It's a lot of assets are over there. I would rather
Mhm.
get a corner if they're going to get something.
Yeah.
Niner Matt says Ian Rappaport just reported that Washington is still taking calls on Young. I think Kendall Fuller, Young, other players are certainly potentially being moved over in Washington. Okay, let's end on a positive note here, because I don't think it is doom and gloom necessarily. I did say that I think the 49ers can pull out of this and be okay, at least make the playoffs and make a deep run. I don't know how far that will get them, but I think the 49ers are going to figure this thing out. They are getting some players back and what have you. Give me 1 or 2 things that you've seen throughout the course of the season, last 3 weeks, what have you, that you think the 49ers can build on going forward that will help them turn this thing around.
So there's two things, and again, I think the offensive issues are being neglected, right? The 49ers, let's talk specifically about last week. 49ers had 11 possessions, scored 17 points.
Mhm.
The Bengals had 10 possessions, scored 31. So we're all focused. I'm not saying you and I, but everyone
Yeah.
else seems to be focused on the defense when the
Mhm.
offense is struggling just as much.
I agree.
Two things really I really liked about the offense last week, despite them only putting up 17. The first one that I've been calling for a long time is put a lot. Really, it's really Jordan Mason is what I want, but put CMC and Jordan Mason in the backfield together. They did it with Elijah Mitchell and CMC. That was a new look from Kyle Shanahan. We haven't seen that at all from him, and I think that is huge because otherwise, it's so predictable what you're going to do with CMC. You're going to be running. If CMC is in the backfield, everyone's predicting. They just dial in on him, and it's very predictable. So the fact that they popped CMC and Elijah Mitchell in there together was great. I would love to see them do that with Jordan Mason and CMC. So I
I
thought
think
that
you're
was
gonna see
great.
that with Debo potentially too. They did it last year
Yes.
and that worked well. Yeah, Debo and CMC.
Yes, I love that. So I'll keep that up. The other thing that it actually came from Brock Purdy, something I really like that I think we need to see more of is his ability to scramble. Like, where
Mm.
has this been, man? Like, keep doing that, man. That was huge. He picked up some very clutch first downs by just using his legs. He's a quick dude, scramble, man. You don't always have to just, try to make this amazing pass play. Take what's given to you. I love that. So my ideal quarterback is Steve Young. That's my favorite quarterback of all time, honestly. And what I loved about him is not these design runs that Kyle tried to do with Trey Lance. It's this ability to scramble when there's nothing available. Don't force it. Just pick up the yards that are available to you, get the first down, and keep the clock going. That was huge from Brock Purdy. He picked up 57 yards scrambling. I think that's big, and I think they need to reinforce, hey, Brock, more of that, dude. There's keep doing that, but also protect yourself, obviously. But I thought that was huge.
Yeah, most certain. That was actually my number one thing was the Brock Purdy
Oh,
mobility.
wow.
I loved seeing that from Brock Purdy. That is something that has always been there, and he just hadn't utilized. In fact, going into this game, I talked about how maybe the conversation this offseason between Kyle and Brock that man, my dogs are going crazy. That we hopefully you don't hear that.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
All right,
Hopefully no
either
one's
way.
breaking in your house or something
Yeah,
like that.
no, I don't think so. It's
Okay.
probably like Amazon or something. Either way, the conversation between Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan this offseason, we thought like, dude, is that going to neuter his play? Like, is he going to be too conservative now? Is he not going to be the playmaker that we liked last year? What's the fine line? Of course, he has to play within structure a little bit more. Can't be rolling out of the back of the pocket going left every time. But man, some of that is what makes you who you are. So what's the fine line? And I think for a few weeks, it was almost non-existent. His mobility was almost gone. Like, what is going on, man? Like, get back to being mobile. Well, not only did he get back to being mobile within the pocket and breaking the pocket and what have you, he added a whole new element, which has always been there. He's not the fastest guy, but especially when teams are going man, and this is kind of the new wrinkle that's happening. Teams have started to go man with Brock Purdy. He has to realize that means there's nobody there to stop him. So if those throws aren't there, you can take off and you can make them pay, get them back into a zone. Now you're more comfortable making the plays that you're used to making, throwing against zones. You read zones very well. Your arm strength is not as much of an issue when it comes to zone passing plays because you're throwing to spots versus trying to throw to players that are, right there next to defenders. It's a whole different ballgame. So force those teams out of their comfortable area and get them back into your comfortable area. I think that is something, because you're right. For me, the defense, I think the talent's there. Hopefully they can figure it out. But the offense does have to score more points. Been talking about it since last year that this trend of this team seems to be more of an offensive one. It started to lean that way. I felt that would be the case this year. And then they dropped off a cliff offensively. That has been discerning. However, I think Brock Purdy adding that mobility, that element, cut down on the turnover worthy plays, add that to your game. This offense can reach that 30 points a game height again. And I think that is enough to win a lot of games.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. We're on the same page, brother.
All right, let me jump through these real quick. Daza says, what happened to Ward 2 years ago? We were talking about him as a potential lockdown corner, and Wilkes is the DB coach. Bro, I don't know what's going on with Ward. Keith Murphy says, last year we were 3-4 with losses to the Broncos, Bears, and Falcons. I was more confident in that team than this team. That's because we got CMC. Something feels off with this squad. And then the coach says, okay, I'm going to be petty real quick. If Saleh was the head coach, D'Amico was the DC, and Mike McDaniel was the OC, why would we need Kyle? Or better yet, what would we be missing? Just want the fans to see it a certain way. No, if the 49ers had that coaching staff right now, they wouldn't be missing anything.
They'd probably be doing better, honestly.
They would be missing nothing.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, I got a jet. Appreciate you for doing this show with me as always. Everybody in the chat, much love. There will be no show tonight. Sunil's out of town, plus trick-or-treating with the kids. I hope you enjoy your Halloween with your family. And I will be back at it tomorrow with Grant, and then most likely a call-in show tomorrow night. We'll talk then. Peace.